I was born exactly 7 minutes after Lewis. It was a fact he loved to remind me of, as if those 7 minutes made him wiser, stronger, and more entitled to the last slice of pizza. But if I ever needed him, those 7 minutes meant nothing. He would have torn the world apart for me, just as I would for him. Lewis and I weren't just siblings. We were best friends, co-conspirators, each other's biggest defenders. It had always been that way. Growing up, we had an unspoken agreement. No matter what happened, no matter who entered or exited our lives, it was us against everything. "Your happiness is my luck," he used to say. And I believed him. Maybe that's why I never expected him to fight me on this. Started at a party. Lewis and I had always been that pair of twins, the ones who arrived together, threw back shots together, and played wingman for each other without a second thought. But that night, I saw him before Lewis did. Grayson Montgomery. Tall, dark, and grinning like the world owed him something. He had the kind of charm that didn't ask permission, it took, effortlessly. And that night, he chose me. "You're Leah, right? The twin." I rolled my eyes. "If you have to ask, you probably don't deserve to know." He laughed, leaning in just a fraction too close, just enough to make my breath catch. "I like that." I should have noticed it then, the slight edge of calculation in his smile, the way his eyes skimmed over me like I was a prize. But I didn't. All I saw was the attention, the way the room seemed to shrink until it was just us. By the time Lewis found me, Grayson and I were already deep in conversation. "We're leaving," Lewis said, his voice casual but firm. I blinked. "No, I'm staying." Lewis' eyes flicked to Grayson, who only smirked in return. "Can I steal her for a minute?" Lewis asked, his voice still light. Grayson chuckled, throwing up his hands. "Be my guest, man." Lewis dragged me outside, his grip tight on my wrist. The second we were alone, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Leah." "What the hell?" "What?" I crossed my arms, bracing myself. "I like him." Lewis exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "He's bad news." I laughed. "Oh, really? And what makes you the authority on who's bad news?" Lewis hesitated, his jaw clenching. "I just know, okay? I've seen the way he is. He jumps from girl to girl, and you don't need that. Maybe I don't need it, but maybe I want it." Lewis stared at me, something dark flickering in his gaze. "You don't know him like I do, Leah. He's a narcissist. A player. The kind of guy who takes what he wants and leaves when he's bored. Then maybe I'll just have fun while it lasts," I shot back. His expression tightened. "That's not you. You don't get to decide who I am." For the first time in our lives, I saw it, the fracture, the crack in our perfect sync. Lewis, always my closest person, was suddenly on the opposite side of an invisible line. For the first time, I wasn't sure he was on my side at all. But Lewis was right. 3 weeks later, I found out. Grayson wasn't mine, not really. He had a history, an ugly one. And the moment I stopped being interesting, he did exactly what Lewis said he would. He left. The night it happened, I went home and curled into myself, shame tightening around me like a noose. I didn't tell Lewis. I didn't have to. He knocked on my door at 2 a.m., slid inside without a word, and sat beside me on the bed. I couldn't even look at him. "Say it," I whispered. "Say I told you so." Lewis didn't move. Instead, he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear like he used to when we were kids. "Your happiness is my luck," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. I should have known better. But isn't that the funny thing about people like Grayson? They make you believe in the same lie twice. It started a week after he left. Text. "Grayson, I messed up." I stared at my phone for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then, against every ounce of self-respect I had left, I answered. "Me, yeah. You did." Should have ended there. But it didn't. He showed up the next night, waiting outside my dorm, shivering in the cold. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by something softer, something I had never seen before. "I hate how we left things," he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "I miss you, Leah." And just like that, I let him back in. It was slow at first. Coffee here. A late-night drive there. Then suddenly we were us again, except we had never really existed in the first place. Lewis was furious. "Leah, are you serious?" he snapped one afternoon when he caught me texting Grayson. "After everything?" "It's different this time," I lied. Lewis scoffed. "Yeah? What's different? Did he wake up one morning and magically decide to be a better person?" "He's trying," I insisted, gripping my phone like it was some kind of shield. "People can change, Lewis." His jaw clenched, his fingers flexing like he wanted to throw something. "Not him." I turned away, biting my lip. "I don't expect you to understand." "I understand perfectly," he snapped. "You're gonna let him break you again, and I have to stand here and watch it happen. That's what I understand." I hated how much that hurt, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I ignored him. Grayson and I spent more and more time together. We went to parties, stayed out too late, made out in the backseat of his car until the windows fogged up. Felt reckless and stupid and wrong, but it also felt good. And then I got sick. I woke up one morning feeling like my head was stuffed with cotton, my throat raw and burning. Lewis took one look at me, sighed, and muttered, "Guess I'm playing nurse today." For 2 days he hovered, making sure I took medicine, shoving water into my hands, rolling his eyes when I tried to act like I wasn't miserable. He even made my favorite soup, standing over the stove with an exaggerated scowl like it personally offended him. "If you ever get sick because of that idiot again, I swear to God, Leah." I groaned, dropping my head onto the table. "Can you not?" Lewis set a steaming bowl in front of me and scoffed. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did my concern inconvenience you?" I sighed. I don't want to hear it right now." He went quiet, and for a moment I thought he was going to let it go. But then he muttered, "I hope whatever thrill you're chasing is worth it." It wasn't. But I kept chasing it anyway. Even after I got better. Even after Lewis stopped trying to argue. I told myself that things were different, that Grayson had changed. And for a little while he played his part beautifully. He brought me flowers. Took me to dinner. Called me just to hear my voice. But then the cracks started to show. A late-night text from a number he wouldn't explain. A lingering glance at another girl at a party. A dismissive laugh when I asked if I really mattered to him. And then one night he didn't show up at all. I waited outside in the cold for nearly an hour. My phone buzzed. "Grayson, hey babe." Something came up. "Rain check?" I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went home. When I stepped inside, Lewis was on the couch, watching some random show with a bowl of popcorn balanced on his lap. He glanced up, did a double take, and sat up straighter. "You're home early?" I forced a smile. "Yeah. Just tired." He narrowed his eyes but didn't push. And that became our routine. Every time I came home, Lewis would ask if I was okay. And I would smile. I would lie. "Yeah, I'm fine." Till one night I wasn't. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember much of anything, really. Just that one second I was sitting across from Grayson, and the next I was standing outside, staring at the sidewalk as tears burned down my cheeks. I didn't feel anything. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just emptiness. When I walked through the door, Lewis looked up. And in that single glance, he knew. His expression darkened, his whole body going rigid. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Then, without a word, Lewis stood. I thought he was going to yell. I thought he was going to say, "I told you so." But instead, he just guided me to my room. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. I sat on my bed, staring at the floor, while Lewis disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, he came back, setting a plate of food and a mug of cocoa with marshmallows in front of me. He said. I didn't move. He sighed, sitting down beside me. "You don't have to talk, but you do have to eat." I shook my head. "I'm not hungry." Lewis didn't argue. Instead, he just grabbed the remote, turned on my favorite show, and sat there. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. The days blurred together. I slept too much. Ate too little. The world felt muted, like I was trapped underwater, watching everyone else move on while I stayed stuck. Depression had never touched me before. But now it clung to me like a second skin. Lewis tried everything, dragging me outside, blasting my favorite songs, even baking cookies despite being terrible at it. But nothing worked. "Leah," he said one night, sitting on the floor beside my bed. "I don't know how to fix this." I curled deeper into my blankets. "You can't." He hesitated. Then quietly he whispered, "But I can stay." I turned my head, meeting his gaze. Depression is strange. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or warnings, it just slips in, slow and silent, until one day you wake up and nothing feels real anymore. I had stopped feeling real. Days blurred together. The air felt thick, my limbs heavy, like I was sinking deeper into something I didn't have the strength to crawl out of. And through it all, Lewis stayed. I don't know how he did it. I don't know why he did it. But every morning, he knocked on my door, slid inside without waiting for an answer, and acted like the world wasn't falling apart around me. Sometimes he forced me to eat. Sometimes he dragged me outside for fresh air, even if it was just to sit on the steps and stare at nothing. And sometimes he just sat beside me, not saying a word. I think those were the times I loved him most. 'Cause Lewis never asked for explanations. He just stayed. One night, after another long, empty day, I lay curled under my blanket, staring at the ceiling. Lewis sat on the floor beside my bed, flipping a coin between his fingers. "You remember when we were kids?" he asked suddenly, his voice soft in the dark. I blinked. "When?" "When we used to play nurse and patient," he said. "You always made me be the sick one because you liked bossing me around." A ghost of a smile flickered across my lips. "That's because I made the best nurse," I muttered. Lewis grinned. "You were terrible," I gasped, smacking his arm weakly. "Excuse me." "You were," he insisted, laughing. "One time you stuck 10 Band-Aids on my forehead for a fake fever." "That was medical innovation," I said, rolling onto my side. Lewis chuckled, then his face softened. "Let's play," he said. I frowned. "What?" "Let's play doctor and patient," he repeated. "Just for fun." I stared at him. "Lewis, I'm 19. We're not kids anymore." "So?" He raised an eyebrow. "Does that mean we can't have fun?" I hesitated. And then slowly I shrugged. "Fine." Lewis sat up straighter, his eyes twinkling. "All right, I'll be the doctor," he announced. "You're the patient." I rolled my eyes. "Why do I have to be the patient?" "Because I said so." He smirked. "Now, let's get started." Before I could protest, he pulled the blanket off me and pressed his wrist to my forehead. He hummed dramatically. "Patient Leah, you seem to have a severe case of..." He paused, tapping his chin. "Cute dumbass syndrome." I snorted. "Excuse me." Lewis grinned. "It's serious. Very contagious. Probably from spending too much time with morons." I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling now. "And what's the cure, doctor?" Lewis pretended to think. Well, there's only one treatment. Immediate application of laughter therapy." "Laughter therapy?" "Yup." He nodded seriously. "Extremely advanced medical science." And then, before I could react, he lunged forward and tickled me. I shrieked. "Lewis!" He grinned wickedly. "Sorry, doctor's orders." I squirmed, laughing so hard my stomach ached. Stop, you psycho." "Not until you're fully cured," he said, relentless. I gasped between giggles, kicking at him. "Lewis!" Finally, he let go, flopping onto his back beside me, laughing just as hard. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. That night, something shifted. I wasn't better. Not yet. But the heavy fog in my chest had lifted just a little. And I knew it was because of Lewis. He never gave up on me. And as I lay there, catching my breath from laughing so hard, I realized something. Lewis prayed. He didn't do it often, not in front of people anyway, but that night, after I had finally fallen asleep, I heard him. His voice, low and raw, barely above a whisper. "Please, God. Let that bastard stay away. Let her heal. Let her be happy again." And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to be. Of course, happiness is never that easy. 'Cause 2 weeks later, Grayson showed up again. Like a disease that refuses to die. He didn't call. Didn't text. Just showed up at my door like nothing had happened. "Leah," he said, his voice smooth as ever. "Can we talk?" Lewis appeared instantly, like he had been waiting for this moment. His jaw was clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. "You've got 5 seconds to get lost," he said coldly. Grayson raised his hands. "Relax, man. I just want to." "I don't care," Lewis snapped. "You don't get to waltz back in like nothing happened." Grayson sighed, turning to me. "Leah," he said, soft and pleading. "Can we talk? Please." And for the first time, I didn't want to. For the first time, I didn't feel the pull. I didn't feel small around him. I felt nothing. Lewis was still glaring at him, his fists clenched at his sides. But I reached out, resting a hand on his arm. "It's okay," I murmured. "I've got this." Lewis hesitated, then stepped back. I turned to Grayson and smiled. "No," I said simply. Grayson blinked. "What?" I said no. I crossed my arms. "You don't get to come back and act like we're fine." "We're not." His face faltered. "Leah, come on. Go." I pointed to the door. "Now." His mouth opened, then closed. And then, for the first time in his entire life, Grayson Montgomery had nothing to say. He left. And I exhaled. Lewis turned to me, his expression unreadable. "That," he said slowly, "was the sexiest thing I've ever seen you do." I burst out laughing. "Oh my God." He grinned, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "You're back," he murmured. I leaned into him. "Yeah," I whispered. "I think I am." And Lewis? He just smiled. Because for the first time in a long, long time, his luck was back too.